Becoming parents changed everything, including our marriage. We went from just being us to always being mom and dad. And honestly, there were times we lost each other in the process. If you felt that way too, you are not alone. Let's talk about how parenting at every stage shapes your marriage and how to stay close through it all.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Imperfectly Married, the podcast,
where real talk meets real marriage.
We're Michael and Heather.
26 years in and still figuring it out.
No filters, no fluff.
Just real love.
Real life.
And a whole lot of grace.
Amen.
Well, hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. Now, you may notice something a little bit different.
Looks a little different.
I mean, it looks a little different, and it's super, super exciting how wonderful this space is. What a blessing it is to be in a new space and trying something new. It's awesome. It's wonderful. Look at our new logo. Look at the new things.
Refreshed and revamped.
Let's go. But it's the same content.
Same content.
What we're fighting for is marriages. That's the whole point. And not perfect marriages.
So imperfect.
Because if it was perfect, it would be, so imperfect.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad to be back in the studio with my wife. It feels like it's been a long time. I guess it has been a long time for us.
But I guess it's only really been 2 weeks for everyone else.
That's true. So, so this episode, super excited about this episode. A little scary, but I think this episode is really good. And we're talking about how parenting changes your marriage. And I know it came not as a surprise to me so much, but it changed more than I thought it would. And I mean, I know in the beginning in our marriage, I'm like, yeah, I want to have kids. I'll
interrupt a little bit.
Okay.
Because I remember when we first got married and I was like, babe, I really want to have like kids like right away. And you were like,
cool.
Okay, cool. Like that sounds exciting.
No.
And I remember that you kept on like trying to like push me off. And it was hard. It was a struggle because I was like my life mission was to be a mom.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what you wanted to happen.
And it's like, and I did not feel fulfilled in life until I was a mom. And so like, I will probably cry at some point during this episode because it's like, it's just so important and so like deep inside of me of my identity, of who I am, of who I've been and who I am trying to figure out who I am now that our kids are kind of like moving on without us.
Yeah, which is a weird feeling. So in our kids space right now, we have 3 and they're all adults. And in fact, they've been adulting. We have a 22, a 21, and an 18. Yeah. So they're all adulting. They're all doing amazing. You feel like they kind of don't need you, and which they kind of don't.
Our daughter just moved out of the house like 2 weeks ago.
I'm not saying it's devastating because it's not. But when you're used to seeing my little girl around, I'm so proud of you. But I miss my little girl. But
I know.
And even in that, even parenting adults is different. So I don't know about you, but I knew it was going to be different, but I didn't know it was going to change us. Now, I'm still a very selfish individual, and I work on that. No comment from you. Thank you.
I'm like, don't show emotion on my face.
No facial expressions. So having kids to me, I knew was going to take some of my time, our time, but I didn't really think it was going to change our relationship as much as it did. And I think what's important about this episode, especially for our viewers and listeners, is that change when you are intentional, when you know the change is coming, and you can make just little steps of making you, your spouse, your significant other a priority, it does make a lot of change. That doesn't mean ignoring the kids. That doesn't mean that all of that stuff changes or it becomes necessarily easier, because I don't know that it necessarily does. But with intention, you still have connection. We were at Disneyland today, and you remember we were waiting. We were sitting there waiting to get in. We were having we were there waiting. Rope drop, which we haven't done a rope drop in a long time. And we saw a couple there with four boys. Four boys. And they were all little. I think there had to have been twins, because there was two really small. Anyway, there was four boys, all between, would you say oldest was probably 7, maybe?
I would say the 10 to like 2.
Okay.
But the 2-year-old had a cast on his
so
leg.
Sad. One of those walking boots, and it was almost as big as he. Oh, so sad. Okay.
Felt so bad for the mom, because that's a hard day at Disney.
Yeah, because that's carry me all day.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. Anyway, so I leaned over, I asked the dad, I was like, hey, we're doing this podcast. Love to ask you a question. What changed in your relationship when you had kids? And he took him a second, because, the rope drop was coming. It was like almost time. And the thing he said was the loss of connection with my wife. And that is one of the major things in child rearing, because there is this point of where, and this is something that really happens with me in even in our relationship, is the rut you get in of just checking the boxes and getting everything done for the kids. And then you're tired, you have nothing left, and it's just go to bed, get up, and do it again.
Yeah. It's exhausting. And I think that even the different phases of parenting, of when the babies are getting up every 2 hours, and the moms are, if you're breastfeeding, it's like you're having to get up, and you're their source of nourishment. So it's like it's dependent only on you. And then I remember there were so many times that it's like I would get up in the middle of the night because the babies were crying, and you would be snoring, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, if I just smother him with a pillow.
Not only does the snoring go away,
it'll just end.
It'll be
done.
I
was like so angry. And it was just like, I would get so furious in the middle of the night, because you're so tired, you're so exhausted, and all you are wanting to do is sleep. And it's like, so you're so sleep deprived. So then your patience is less. And then you're also hormonal for the women. And so there's just so much that is going on, and so much unanticipated change happens all at once. They always say, oh, when the baby comes, like your world is going to turn upside down. And you're like,
okay. Yeah. I mean, sure. Okay. You have to hold the baby a little bit, but change the diaper.
Right. And it's like, you just don't anticipate the relational change that I think that happens between the marriage relationship, because
absolutely.
Your focus before was just us, and now it's solely this child that is so dependent upon you for everything. And as a mom, it was really challenging. It was hard to not want to give my child everything, and then you get nothing because I don't have anything left for you. So I had to really purpose to try to bring in that emotional connection. And heaven forbid you ever wanted to have sex after a hard day. I was like, oh my gosh,
Well, no.
I'm like, steal everything from me.
Okay, is there anything else that you want? And honestly, because one of the things that you said, it's very true. It's not intentional. You're not trying to not give. It's just there's many times there's nothing left to give. And so literally you're just surviving. And if you don't know that, I know for me, well, you know what, to be honest, I'm sure people told us and we were like, yeah, whatever. I know, I get it's hard to have kids. Cool. It's hard for you. It's like, but I didn't understand the gap in connection that we would have, that you're married, you're going through it, you're just trying to keep it going. But every single day there was a grind down and a grind down and a grind down. And especially for you, yes, I'm out there working. I come home. Yes, I've had a long day. But this is many times, I think sometimes husbands and spouses don't quite understand is, yes, you're working outside the home, but he is working inside the home. And so it's not that you're coming home from outside of work and coming home like, I've had a hard day, I need time to relax. Well, the one inside the home has had no time to relax. And I know for me, that was something I did not consider. I'm like, I'm out there working, you're home all day. What's the big deal? Like, and that was so inconsiderate of me. And I think it's very easy for, again, spouses, whoever is outside of the home, whatever, to not appreciate the effort it takes, the emotional toll that it takes to care for a human being all the time, and then even overnight. And then like, hey, I have to get up in the morning. And you're like, I've been up all morning. Like, that whole thing. So we have a lot to talk about. We've jumped forward, back, all the things. So I have some categories. I have some things that I'm just going to kind of bring up and say, hey, these are things that we can kind of discuss, and we'll kind of go from there, because we went from husband and wife. That's all we were. Husband and wife, the only thing we needed to care about. We were married for
4 years.
4 years before we had kids. And so we were used to, and then 4 years before that, we were dating. So we were together for a long time.
Yeah.
We knew and had habits of only us. It's the only thing that matters. We're doing what we want to do.
And we worked together.
There's that too.
So we actually had very little reprieve from each other. And then we had kids.
Yeah, see that?
And then I ended up staying at home, and I was a stay-at-home mom for, gosh. Well, I would say I was a stay-at-home mom until I started homeschooling.
Yep.
Then once I started homeschooling, then it wasn't until probably 8 years later that I went back into the workforce, and I was then a working mom.
Yeah, which that's
a whole
other
dynamic.
My goodness, that honestly is. Okay. So the first scenario that happens, the first thing that happens is the shift from couple to now you're co-parents. And at first it's wonderful and beautiful. You had a baby, you bore a human being. That whole thing is crazy, right?
Yeah.
That whole thing's nuts. Now you have a baby, you take it home. Now, there could be traumatic events that happen there with ours. Our first was early, 6 weeks early, NICU, the whole thing. So it's scary. So that's an even another dynamic, right? Especially like work and taking off, all the things that come as a stressor, not even just because of the baby, but even work scenarios, all this other kind of stuff. But so there's that shift from couple to parent. Now, my question for you is, do you remember the first moment that you realized that parenting had shifted the focus away from us?
Yes. Yes. No, I remember exactly the moment.
You remember everything.
I do. So there was a moment. So we had just brought Blake home from the hospital. And again, to reiterate, he was 6 weeks, or my water broke 7 weeks early. He was 6 weeks premature.
He was little.
And we were in the hospital for a long time with him. So you had to take a lot of time off of work.
Yeah.
And I will not
thankful for those people. You know who you are for giving me that time off.
Yeah, it's true. But I will never forget the moment that I think we had been home maybe 48 hours and you would come down the stairs and I'm putting together the swing and I'm sitting there and you go, babe, I need to go back to work tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
And I just lost it because I was like, how am I supposed to do this without you? And it was at that moment that it was almost like I needed to separate from you so that I could then do this on my own. And I don't know if that was right. It's probably more survival mode because I didn't know how to compute doing this on my own. Like, I had only anticipated us doing it together. So it was kind of like, it was like our birth plan. I had a birth plan for every child, and every birth plan did not end up happening the way that it was supposed to. But I think what was so interesting is the birth plan is for a short amount of time, but then the real part, it's like kind of like the whole wedding versus the marriage.
They're like, high five, good luck. Right?
Yes. And then you leave and you have an idea of what you think it's going to be, taking this child home and how things are going to unravel and flow. And then you recognize, oh my gosh, it's not anything that I thought or anticipated. So I think that for me, I had to almost disconnect from us partnering together, because we had always partnered together. And I needed in that moment to be like, okay, because I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to break down and I'm going to actually lose it. And I had to make a choice of, am I going to lose it, or am I going to pull on my big girl panties with the pads, the prenatal pads, and the water bottles? The women know. But it's like those were the things that it's like I had to kind of tap into in order to move forward. So, which was really interesting. This is actually helpful for me because I'm verbally processing this in this moment. Yeah.
And what's interesting for me is, and this is so terrible to say, it shows my selfishness. And I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I'm okay with saying it, because it is the reality of what happened. It was a relief for me to let me go do the thing that I know I'm good at and know what to do.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So that's a little different, right?
Yeah.
Let me get away and win instead of being home and tired. I don't know how to do it. Crying, feeding, little, trying to, it's almost like you don't even, the husband-wife thing is not even on your mind. It's, we have to take care of a human. And there are parts of that are good, because that is the responsibility. Like you when you're having a child, I'm sorry, the selfishness needs to die, because you need to take care of the child.
Right.
That's hard for a person like me. I get that. But like, there comes a time where you have to be, it's child only. So there's that interesting dynamic where we're husband and wife, and then we transition into mom and dad, and that's where we find ourselves. And the transition can be beautiful because it's intended. You need to make a move from you and I to now us. The problem is it's ever so slight, because it doesn't happen right away. But just a little bit of a change will continue to have you grow apart. You're fighting this fight on a daily basis, trying to take care of our child. I'm coming home tired from work, and then coming home and not always being the best husband in the area of supporting with helping with a child, right? There's some amazing spouses out there that as soon as they come home, they drop their bags and it's like, you take a break, I'm on now. I unfortunately wasn't always that person. I'd probably go a step further and say I rarely was that person. So that makes the divide even greater, but it doesn't have to be like that. It's okay that the relationship is different. It's supposed to be different. So, right?
Yes. And what I would say too is that I think what's so interesting about our situation is that was our scenario, but just because that was our scenario doesn't mean that scenario repeats. So whatever it is, our like relationships change, and ours just changed in our dynamics of where when you came home, you weren't super involved. And so like that was a wedge for resentment. But there's other areas of where it can be different and things can change. And so what I would do is I would encourage our listeners to really examine. So what was your crutch? Was it the mom when the husband comes home being like, I'm done, like tag, you're in. And then it's like now the dad is is now holding
He has his own
resentment.
resentment.
Yes.
Right now it's just like, okay, yeah.
And so there's so many different scenarios on how the kids change the relationship that it's like, just because this is our situation doesn't mean that that's the standard. There's so many different ways that I think the enemy comes in and wedges in resentment. It's like there's so many, once kids come into the picture, the amount of resentment that can wedge between your relationship is astronomical.
Well, because the potential immediately rises. The potential now you have all the opportunity in the world, because now resentment is where you're going to land. It doesn't matter. That's possibly where you could land, because it's really easy. And I love the fact that you say it is different for everyone, because this may not meet most people. So I would say, especially when it comes to the a shift from being a couple to now being co-parents, expect there to be a change. Expect that there's going to be a change, but the change is okay. That doesn't mean it's broken. It means that it's changing, and that's okay. Our encouragement, I would say, is be intentional even for a little bit, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, and just connecting, looking at each other, taking a deep breath, and just saying a hi, right? And again, it's different for everyone. So it's really analyzing how best, when you think about your relationship, how best do you connect and find a little pocket, just a little pocket? Because as much as a little change and deviation will separate you, that same little intention will keep you closer together. And so that's one thing that I, especially when it comes to this, that I was hyper focused on how difficult it was. And that just shows my selfishness. Now, other people may not be like that, but I know that there's people like me. And what I would have told myself is, you're right. It is hard and it does change. I would encourage, just stay connected with your person just a little bit, just a little bit, because you're not going to completely be a different person. That's a reality and that's not expected. But what is an encouragement to people is just show up a little bit to keep that relationship connected.
Yes. And one of the things that it's like, hindsight's 2020. I so wish that we would have stayed consistent on our date nights, stayed consistent on keeping our communication. Like, I feel like we have a lot of fun with communication now. It's like we have like fun questions that we ask each other. And it's like, we're just like, oh, well, what about this? Like, if you won the lottery, what would you do? Like those types of things.
What I would do is...
I'll send you my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think that would have been so helpful and so beneficial for us is keeping the lighthearted conversations of just, hey, how was your day? I remember, like, you would go to work and you would come home. We have more conversation now about your job and about what's going on in at work than we did back then. And I think what's so interesting about that is that now we have that intimacy of communication and relationship that I don't feel like we necessarily nurtured back then, because we were in that survival mode.
It's new territory. You have every single day was new. You had no idea.
And we didn't train for it. Like, there's no class. Like, you literally go, well, I mean, we went to birthing class.
You have the breathing class.
Birthing class, which we didn't even make it to because I had him early.
Yeah. How are you going to do that breathing when you have an emergency? Like, anyway. But
I think that what was so interesting about it is that we didn't know what we didn't know. And today we can sit here and hopefully we can encourage the young people that are just starting out, that are having those babies and the first of the first. Those moments are so precious and so valuable. But your identity, you are now a mom, but you are not just a mom.
Yeah, no,
You are a
that's
wife.
huge. Yep.
You were a wife before you were a mother. And that's what I would encourage the moms and the wives out there, saying that you were a wife before you were a mother. So don't forget your first love. Don't forget to nurture that relationship that got you to be a mother in the first place.
You remember, and I know you remember this advice. It's the advice that when we first heard it, we were like, I don't know about that. When we were told, remember, the most important relationship in your family is not you and your kids, it's you and your spouse. And I remember hearing that going, remember?
Yes.
Remember?
I remember where we were standing.
Oh, I know where we were sitting.
Yes.
I could go back to that place right now. And I remember when I walked away from that, like, wow, that's a little short-sighted. Like, geez, man, what's going on? Well, I can tell you right now, I can tell you that is the best advice that I've ever had. That doesn't diminish the relationship that you have with your kids, because that is an honor to have children. That is an honor to raise them, create a legacy, and send them out. That is all absolutely true. But if you neglect even a little bit the most important relationship in a family, which is one between spouses, I have to say that is the best advice that we have had. Not that we've always followed it, but we can always go back to it and say, because we know that now, especially all of the hard times that we've had where we could only rely on each other, right? Because that's all you can. You can't rely on your kids to feed you emotional strength and support, though there are some amazing kids that can do that in certain circumstances, not to take that away. But in most circumstances, it is you and I having to walk through this in the most healthy way that we can, and we have to maintain connection together. Now, we've only stayed on the first category. We need to continue, or this is going to be an 8-hour episode. Okay, so, but the encouragement I would say for that is the change is okay, because there's going to be change. If you don't think there's a change, you're being ignorant. There is a change, but the change doesn't mean brokenness. The change doesn't mean now it's over. It's changing, and to help that, be intentional about your time together, because that's the most important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. This next one is the pressure to be a perfect parent. Now.
Oh, this is me.
Well, same, because I'm black and white. Things are right or wrong. So I'm like, I want to be perfect. I want to be seen as, it's weird because you're like, am I perfect? No, but I want to be seen as doing it right all the time. And really what I'm saying is I'm trying to be perfect. So would you say there is a real pressure, whether external or internal, to be a perfect parent?
I think it's unfair, because I think my personality lends to being a perfect parent, because I wanted to.
Super mom. Because that was your identity. No,
I didn't want to be a super mom. I was a super mom.
And you were.
I was 100% a super mom, to where when we didn't have the right school available to us, I was like, well, of course I'm going to homeschool my kids. Yep. And of course they will have like the most proper education, and I will give them the best crafts, and we will have the perfect snacks. Although I was not a snack mom. I will say that I would go to the park with my kids, and they would always have to mooch off of everyone else, because I was the fun perfect mom.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
And because I wanted my kids to experience life to the fullest, so I wanted to give them every opportunity to have the most fun. When we homeschooled, I remember us driving up to Disneyland because the Tower of Terror had just transformed.
Yeah, it had been modified to
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yep. And we drove up because they were homeschooled.
School this day? I don't think so.
We drove up and we waited in line for 2.5 hours just to ride the ride. And then we drove home. And it was like, those were the types of things, because to me, that was being a perfect mom, because it was providing my kids with the excitement of life that I wanted them to really feel and like absorb from the experiences of life.
Would you say that the expectation or the desire to be a perfect parent ever put a riff or a gap or difficulty between us?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily think so, not in our situation.
Yeah, because I would agree with that. Because I was like, I'm just answering the question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
It's my turn. Because I always leaned your way for kid rearing. So whatever you said, let's do that, right? Now, if we're talking about discipline, that's different, right? But when it comes to if that's what we're doing, if that's what we're doing, that's fine. I had no problem that that's what you're doing, right? Did I have a problem? Am I lying? I don't know if I'm lying.
I just think you recall things differently.
Oh, see, I totally do. Oh my gosh, this is
Which is
terrible.
fine. No,
gosh.
it's no, because so the strategic, like the nose up against the wall, the naughty spot, like all of those types of things were my ideas that I brought to the table, and you would just you would enforce them with everything in you because it was the right thing to do in your mind.
You're right. You're right. Gosh, I don't remember anything. It's terrible. Holy moly. Okay. So, but you would say perfection though was something that you wanted to achieve, whether you were intending to do it or not. In your mind, you wanted to be the best mom.
Oh, no, I didn't want to be the best mom. I was the best mom.
Which equated though to, in your mind, perfection. So you had a standard that you were, wait. Was there a standard that you were trying to hit based on culture, based on other things, or was it just how you saw it and here's the standard and that's what a perfect mom is?
Well, so we're going to go back a few episodes when how does your past define your marriage?
Yep.
So this is one of those things. So I didn't have what I would say the most present mom and emotionally fun wise. Like it was like my mom was just tired and she was exhausted. She was dealing with her own addictions and whatnot. So I didn't have this relationship with her that I would have wanted for my kids. So that's where my perfectionism came from, is because I had this desire to be anything but what I had. And so my personality is just interesting. And ever since
the word you're looking for is amazing.
Sure. But ever since I was like 5 or 6, I watched other parents and I would note, oh, that's what I want to do with my kids. That's the kind of mom I want to be. So I was always taking notes on the things that I wanted to do and who I wanted to be at such an early age. That's why I say maybe it's a divine thing, because I really like for me, my calling in life was to be a mom, and I was going to be the best mom and give my kids the best opportunity because I didn't have that. And then, I mean, this is jumping ahead a little bit and we'll have a separate episode about this, but when the outcome of our kids didn't turn out how I thought it was going to be, it was devastating to me. Because I had so much control and so much expectation upon what this was going to be. And the same thing with our marriage. So when we had kids, I had an expectation of what I thought that our marriage was going to be and how it was going to be within having kids. And so when it didn't turn out that way, like it changed me, and I had to always course correct and pivot my expectations, because expectations were the crux of everything that I ever have had and currently deal with.
So that's an interesting point, because I was just going to say the external expectations that I think somebody has on me as a parent really drove how I parented our kids my own way. So I didn't want to be perceived as a weak dad or a weak man or have unruly kids or all of the things that could be, that you've heard people judge other kids. I've judged other kids, and then it goes on to the parent. You think the parent, man, have I learned a lot that's not that. But you honestly, many times you judge the parent on the kid's behavior. right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be judged as somebody that wasn't doing it right. I don't know that perfection for me was the thing. It was right or wrong. But the rightness was what I thought was right. And so nobody could tell me what you're doing is wrong if I already thought it was right. And so it's interesting because my idea of being a perfect parent, I wouldn't connect perfect with what I was doing. But when I look at it, I was trying to be perfect on my scale of being perfect. And it had a lot to do with, one, how I perceived myself, but also how I think other people perceive me, because I want them to tell me, wow, you're such a good dad. You have great kids. And my kids and me and their behavior and what they do, sure, I have some input in that and raising them up, but they also have their free will to do their own thing that shouldn't necessarily reflect on me because it's their problem. But no,
That's such a hard.
No, it is.
That's a whole other episode.
Well, but there's some reality to that that's very true.
Yes.
Because
no, it's I'm saying what I'm saying is that that's a hard reality to walk out. But it is true that it's like the way that we parent and how we shape our children, the choices that they make are still their own choices and it has no reflection on us. But how can you not like feel that as a parent? Because I'm just saying that's been my biggest parenting struggle, period.
I mean, even what you just said is that it doesn't reflect on you. In other people's eyes, it does. So how can it not? Like we know it right now. With the past 5 years of our life, certain things have happened, and we know for certain that people have looked at us as the problem. Now, I'll take some ownership in some of it, absolutely. But at the same time, there isn't that. So the point of this category, so we can make an episode out of each category. But the pressure of becoming a perfect parent is one that should never be the standard, because being a perfect parent, one, is not a thing to achieve.
Doesn't exist.
Does not exist. You can be a very good parent, right? I would even say the most important thing is not how great and wonderful you are, but that you are there, but that you are present, that you are showing up. You know what? In all honesty, I look back on our life. I wish I was more authentic with our kids, because I think they appreciate that more than all of the other things. You want to be strong. You want to I mean, I've even connected some of my anger back to not knowing how to parent in a particular point. So I get angry at their behavior. But what I'm angry at is I don't know what to do. And so now I'm angry, and that gets us absolutely nowhere. But this is the thing. When you don't know in advance that you are going to experience and be confronted with things that you don't know what to do with your kids, when you don't know that in advance, you can't help but respond in the very deep ways. And for some, maybe that's wonderful, but for others, it's ugly because you just don't know. You're fearful. I know I definitely dealt with that. And I know one of the things that, one, you don't have to be perfect as a parent. Absolutely not. You just need to show up. You need to be there for your kids. You need to be authentic, call out what's good in them. You know, all of the things that builds them up. I know when we look back on our kids, we have done a lot of reflecting over our parenting. We've had a lot of tears over how we've chosen to parent, the things that we feel like we missed, and gosh, we could have done things better. But the one thing that I wish I would even say now that I did more was to call out the things in my kids' life that were good, and not concentrated so much on don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. All of those things, when really I could have just said, hey, great job right there. Even now I'm having trouble even saying those words. I wasn't a terrible dad. I encouraged our kids. But I was a very, this is right, that's wrong, and calling that out.
Right.
And but I want to encourage parents. Perfection's not the standard.
Yeah. And I would say that it's like also knowing the personality of your kids and knowing your personality and how those personalities can sometimes clash, and then how they can also work together, I think is probably one of the more valuable tools that I wish that we would have known back then when our kids were littler. And again, like knowing personalities of a kid can be a little bit challenging, but even just being sensitive to that and sensitive to the breakdowns, sensitive to, you know, we were just talking about it today at Disneyland. We overheard a family going, "Why are you so scared?" And it was like, and we would have that conversation with our daughter, and we would always make our kids do a no thank you ride.
Oh man.
So
best thing ever. But.
Yeah, it was the best thing ever. But the reality is that they were terrified, but they were likely terrified because they didn't know the entire experience of what the ride was. So walking our daughter, especially through the entirety of the ride, would help ease her anxiety to where she could easily make a decision. Oh yeah, okay. No, that sounds like something I could do, as opposed to being like, well, why are you upset? Why are you angry? Or why are you just a scaredy cat? And what that does is it puts them down and makes them feel that something's wrong with the way that they're feeling. And, you know, we don't always want to coddle our kids and coddle their feelings. But what it does is...
But being aware of them. You have to be aware of them.
Yes. And oftentimes what would happen is one of us would have that reaction, but then the other one would want to come in and try to rescue. And then what happens is it puts us at war.
That's exactly right.
So then our different parenting styles of the compensation game then comes into where now you and I are at odds because we're trying to compensate our parenting styles for our kids' sake instead of just calling up and exhorting our kids in their gifts, because that's all you have to do. You don't have to tear anyone down. And if one parent's tearing down, then you just come in and you just exhort them, but don't come in making the other parent feel as though what they just did is like,
Yeah, because I was just thinking about an example like that, because we've had that happen before, where we're in this great fun place, we're doing this amazing thing, you're crying, not you, but your kids are crying.
Or I'm crying.
You could be crying. You know, one of the kids are crying, they're scared. I'm like, come on, suck it. Like, let's go. We're here. We paid $20,000 to, you know, whatever, like to do this thing, like, let's just go. So I'm getting frustrated because one, again, selfish one, you're slowing us down. You want to come in. You don't like the fact that your husband is treating our kids poorly, right? You want to come in and save. Now I'm like, now you make me feel like an idiot, which that's not what you're trying to do. But then in that right there builds resentment, because now just having this different interaction, now we're against each other because of just that interaction. And sometimes you can't help that. It takes a lot of internal discipline to control that and not feel that way or act differently. But that is, if you don't, again, the whole point of this particular episode is to talk about those things change you and your spouse. That happens. All of a sudden you're having a great time, and now boom, right out of the gate, now you guys have a problem because of something that one of them said to your own kids. And now it's like, so not having that awareness, because going into that, trying to really have grace, having compassion for the moment that you're not against each other, you know, and that's hard to believe sometimes when you're in the midst of that. I know we've talked about this. I always have a hard time with that, and it's just my own thing, is you thinking that you're not against me. You're not coming in to save them as a result of what I've done. Right. All you're trying to do is make the situation better, and understanding in a relationship that when something like that happens, you have a choice. You have a choice to either, I'm standing my ground and you're not going to make me feel like that, or again, like we've always talked about, choosing each other. I'm going to choose in this moment that you're not against me. You're just loving our children, and I should be really happy about that. And just because my insecurity rises up doesn't mean that I need to respond in such a way that would always make things worse because I want to defend my position that she or he needs to be better. Let's get on the ride. Who cares if it's scary,
And I would say for the other spouse, watch your eyes, because I know that there's been times where I've been on the kids level and I've been like, it's okay, honey. And I look up at you and I give you the head tilt with the eyes. And it's like,
communicates
it's
a
like,
whole
babe,
paragraph. Yeah.
Like knock it
Yeah.
off. And it's like, and it does. And those types of moments will automatically put the other spouse on the defense.
One of the things that I think even in as a spouse, because it's all right, we're talking about marriage, our relationship when we have kids is calling out what you do well as a parent. And because you have always been really good at diffusing situations. I'm really good at stirring up situations. And over time, we were able to and have been able to kind of balance each other out.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things in the midst of this that brings us closer together as a married couple is to call out, you're so good in situations like A and B, or when you see the other spouse caring for your children, actually calling that out, because it lifts them up, right? It helps again, because the whole point is to bring, as parents, you will on your own go apart. That is the natural road that you're going to take. So every time in any moment that you can take to bring yourself closer together, like, oh, that was so good. That was really great. Something small, like, oh my gosh, you make lunches great. Or you drive up you pick them up great. Or you're always on time. Or I mean, as funny as it would be,
I'm never on time, so thanks.
This is so true.
It is so true.
But you know what I mean? It's like calling out those things that make you feel seen by your spouse as a parent. Like, gosh, you're a good parent.
I think one of the most valuable things that we can do as the other spouse is to encourage and pray for your spouse.
No.
Because if you are not encouraging or praying for your spouse, the question then becomes, who is?
Yeah, that's
right.
Great.
So who is encouraging you at your parenting? Like, there's no one, or I would say if there is someone else that is, especially of the opposite sex, encouraging your spouse in their parenting skills, you better watch them like a hawk, because they're coming after your husband. Right. Is the reality. And
or your spouse, husband or wife, yeah.
In my situation. Yeah. But like those are big red flags. And so it's like, but also recognizing that it's like your spouse needs to hear words of encouragement, that it's like, I see the effort that you're putting in. I see you. I see who you are, and I still love you, and I still choose you, even though this season seems really challenging and really hard. And you know what? And I'm praying for you.
That does not take a lot. It seems like it may, but even the smallest thing is seen. When you feel seen, add encouragement to that, that goes a long way.
It goes so long.
Absolutely.
And I think that those two things, especially when the kids were little and even in their, like, I would say up until like junior high school, it's like those things would have gone a really long way in nurturing that intimacy, because those both are very intimate things that you're promoting that intimacy within the marriage.
So good.
So good.
Okay. How about this?
Okay. Why am I scared?
No.
Okay.
Well, it adds a little. So time, energy, and touch starvation. Especially in the beginning when the kids are little, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you're usually doing it. Here, you do this and I'll go down and I'll do, you're usually not doing it together in the thing. You're doing a lot of things apart just to accomplish the total time together.
Yeah.
Right. And
so say the words again.
time, energy, and touch starvation. Right.
Mm-hmm.
When there's nothing left in the tank, it's easy to put your marriage on autopilot
100%.
because, again, we go all the way back to the beginning. You're just trying to check the boxes to make sure everybody's living, fed, wiped, clean, bathed, clothed next day. And it takes so much out of you. And we talked about, there's nothing left in the tank. So we're married. So like, there it is. We literally know exactly what that is because it was, and we've even done that in the last 5 years of our life, autopilot. Just, we get stuck in a rut and it's just every day, do the thing, go to work, even without kids, though we have them. You can find yourself in autopilot, which then it's just you're not checking in.
Mm-hmm.
You're not spending time together. Touch, like you're not hugging, kissing. Maybe you're not being intimate just because you're going through the motions of just trying to survive.
Yeah. And I would say when the kids are little, it's more of a physical task oriented, like
that's a great way to put that.
It's like you're feeling deprived in energy. You're feeling deprived in just the mundane tasks. But what I would say is that as the kids get older, and I feel like this is kind of the rut that we've experienced, is for the mom, I'm only going to speak from my own experience. For me, my experience within having adult kids is when their decisions are more weighty, it takes my emotional toll out of me. And I am then consumed by their well-being. And that then has me feel that lack of all of those things, time, energy, and touch.
Time, energy, touch. Yeah.
And so those things become less, and because they're less important to me because I am feeling so deprived. And in those moments, I actually need you to come in and fill my emotional capacity. Whereas when the kids were little, I may have needed you to fill more of my physical capacity, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. That is a great example because two completely different needs. And wow, without communication, you don't know that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can see just in that example, which was absolutely fantastic, just in that example, without communication, I could go wash the dishes and have not met the need.
Mm-hmm.
When what you needed was an emotional connection, was you're drained of all of the things because of the emotional weight of name the thing that happened with our children. And now we're just, I think I'm helping. And thank you for doing that. That's great. But the need isn't met. And since we're not talking because we're just checking boxes,
Mm-hmm.
I love you're just trying to get it done. There's tasks. So do this and do this and do this. Now, without that communication, the starvation of those things is now even greater, right? Less time together because I'm going to go do this thing over here, right? The energy, energy is gone because of everything that you have already done.
Mm-hmm.
And then the separation, there's no touch and feel and intimate connection because of just you have nothing. And when it goes unchecked, it can be very much devastating.
Mm-hmm.
When there is no time to connect. And I'm on repeat because intentional effort to go against what's naturally going to happen. And this is what I want all of our viewers to know is these are things that absolutely will happen. The point is to intentionally go against the grain and help keep it on the track, because it's going to happen. You're going to have time, energy, and touch starvation because you have kids. That is the reality. It's going to happen. But what are the things that you're going to do to help alleviate that, to help mitigate those things from happening? And again, it all comes back to intention, and it doesn't take a lot. Kids are down. Sit on the edge of the bed and just look at each other and check in. Ask, how are you doing? Not as a mom. How are you as a human? How are you doing? Tell me about your day. A dangerous question I've always had difficulty with. How are we doing? Right? Like, because you don't want to hear the end. You want it to be good. But those are the things that mitigate that gap and the starvation. I mean, even sometimes it's awkward. I remember somebody in our lives said, what was it? A 6 second hug, or a hug that's uncomfortably long.
Oh, I hate these.
Like, it's so uncomfortably long, but something happens with intention. Grab your spouse, grab them, just take a moment and breathe together. I mean, we did this a couple days ago, like just hugging and breathing together, because there's something that happens. The easy action is to allow the gap to widen, because you don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with filling your emotional capacity, because I feel empty. So now what do? The answer isn't not to try. The answer is not that. The answer very well could be to come and just, how are you? I have nothing left. You have nothing left. We have nothing left. There's still a connection happening in those moments. And even to call it out, to say, I have nothing. I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And I've seen you do this and you've been doing that. And it's just so much. There is something when you're on common ground to have that level of connection that will help you feed what is being starved, because you are intentionally trying to fill with whatever capacity that you have, you're trying.
And I would say that sometimes those questions can lead maybe to some conflict, but don't let the occasional conflict keep you from being intentional in the other moments, because it may have just hit wrong that day. And so it's like the intention is to bring intimacy. The intention is to bring repair. The intention is to relieve some stress. So maybe it's just encouraging them. Maybe it's giving them, a gift. Maybe it's tapping into their love languages, and saying like, oh, I really see this in you, or I'm going to give you a hug, or words of affirmation, time spent together. Like, let's get a sitter for the kids. We need to reconnect. All of those things, I think, are things that are leading with intention that can bring intimacy. It can bring relief of the stress and of those hard times, whether it's emotional or physical, depending on your kid's age. Every season is different, and every season is trying in its own ways. I would say our earlier years of parenting, not necessarily marriage, but parenting, were easier than I would say the last 5 years. The last 5 years have been the most challenging for us and the most difficult. But in those difficulties, you can either choose to lean and press into each other, or you can turn against each other. And I think that that's where the intentionality really plays key in honing in on a healthy, vibrant, lasting marriage, which you either want or you don't want. And everything that we do in life takes that intention.
I think one of the important things that you were kind of leaning on there is we need not be afraid of conflict or pain in the midst of trying to work something out.
Yeah.
If those two items, conflict and pain, are often tools that create in us better tomorrows.
Mm-hmm.
Because now how you handle the pain and conflict is different, but to avoid it, so avoiding conflict and pain will always result in a downhill scenario for you. That's just the reality. Because if you have avoidance isn't helping you at all.
Mm-hmm.
Leaning into conflict, not looking for it, but expecting that there could be, and being intentional about walking through it together, always choosing each other, fighting for the relationship, fighting to stay connected, fighting to feed the starvation, that then builds up in not only yourself, but in your spouse together to better tomorrows, because the muscles have been used to now go, wow, we made it through that conflict and it was painful and it hurt and I was offended maybe, or maybe being able to work through that is only for the betterment of your relationship. And that is one of those things. It's a great point. You intend to, you have a good intention, you're sitting at the end of the bed, you're both exhausted, you start to have questions, and you're right. That could end up rising to the surface, some resentment. You don't do this. All the always, never, all those words. But if your heart is to resolve and come towards each other and meet each other, the pain will result in joy. Sometimes it takes some time to get there, but that is so much better than ignorance and choosing to ignore and shy away from pain and conflict, because your muscles just deteriorate. Your ability to be able to choose your spouse becomes harder and harder, because now you're just becoming somebody different than the person who is choosing your spouse, right? And that is one of the ways that I think is an important, not conflict, but it's an important way to go against the starvation part of that. So we've covered a lot, and I want to end on this. I want to end on, what would you say to parents? Specifically, what would you say to spouses, marriages with kids, that is one of the most important things for them to model for their kids?
Compassion, love, and just that fighting for people, whether it's your spouse or relationships, and just humanity, like seeing others above themselves. Because if they choose others above themselves in their relationships, in their spousal relationships, in just their work relationships, they will always succeed, because most of the time, taking the low road, you are naturally exalted.
One of the things that I think is so important that we understood later, I mean, if we were to look back, I think we always knew it, but maybe weren't intentional about it. But really wanting to encourage couples with children that your marriage is your child's first classroom. It's their first opportunity to see love, respect, forgiveness, pursuit. And that is one of the, just imagine if as a couple, as a husband and wife, if our kids were able to witness our pursuit of each other, even through argument, conflict, would be able to see us forgive each other, would see us love each other despite all of those things. I think sometimes it's a habit of people to kind of keep it separate, which, if you're having a conflict, it's not like, hey, bring the kids in, not like that. But to be able to model to them, because if we don't model it, they're going to learn it from their friends, TV, social media, And all of that right now, not to say that there's not good friends out there, all of that right now is not necessarily that great. Sometimes compassion, sometimes grace doesn't make sense and it's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
But to model to our children, to model to your kids that reality, that's one of the greatest gifts that we as a husband and wife and as parents that we can model for our kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah. And I would say that I want to end with that because if you didn't hear anything, do those things. Model for your kids pursuit of each other despite the difficulty of parenting. And a reminder that, you know what, it's going to be different and different's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's working together, finding the new normal that has grace filled in it. You're pursuing each other, right? You're fighting for each other. And I think that is where you are going to be winning in your marriage with intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
What else you got?
I'm good.
You're good?
Good.
I think we did some good coverage.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
I think because the reality of the fact that your marriage will change and knowing that it's going to change and that it's okay and you can take steps to making it better, I think that's absolutely key.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay. Well, I want to leave an encouraging note to our viewers as we leave, because there could be many of you that are out there that are having a different experience. But I think what I want to encourage, what I think we would encourage, is that different is okay. But there is some things that you're not just raising children, you are leaving a legacy. You're not just, it's not to get up and out. It's not necessarily always about that. The best thing that you can give your kids is a strong, loving marriage. And it takes work and it's fighting for each other. But it won't happen by accident. It happens with intention, because when just left alone on autopilot goes separate. You do your own thing, you find your own way. And I think our encouragement to our audience is intentional. Be intentional. So until next time, keep showing up, keep giving grace, and keep choosing each other.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks for spending time with us today on Imperfectly Married.
We hope something in today's episode encouraged you or gave you a fresh perspective.
If it did, share it with a friend, leave a review, or connect with us on our social platforms.
Remember, no marriage is perfect.
But yours is worth fighting for.